Works a Corso, for those of you who may not know me. I just recently came out with a book co-authored with Fraser Parker called True Mysteries 2. I do mentalism, hypnosis, and occasionally I do magic as well. I've been doing stage shows on and off for about 11 years. It's kind of hard because when I hit the military, everything kind of became a little fuzzy as far as that goes. So about, I'd say, 10 or 11 years. I try to blend mentalism and hypnosis as much as I can. I like to get that gray area in between because
it looks like Gavin just went dark. Is that what you're getting, Oliver?
Yeah, it looks a bit
Alright,
funny.
so he may have lost his connection there for a second. Let's wait for a second, get him back up. He's moving again. So it may have just slowed on his end. We'll wait for it to catch up.
Sorted?
You back with us yet?
Are we sorted now?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, so you're back with us. Sorry, you cut out there for a minute.
Okay, do you want me to go over my bio again?
Yeah, we'll start with a little bit. You mentioned you do mentalism and stuff like that. For people that have read your work, what sort of stuff is it that you feel stands out the most about your work? What are your preferred methods? Preferred scripting paths, even? What sort of things do you perform?
Basically, I like to kind of strive to create or perform something that has grounds in, I guess, like reality, like you're presenting yourself as a suggestionist or mentalist, however you want to label yourself. But I like to kind of push it as far as I can using a blend of traditional mentalism, magic techniques, along with actual suggestion, dual reality, and hypnosis. And I try to get the line as close to real as you can go before it becomes too unstable to say you have a 100% chance all of the time. Now, that's not to say I do perform some presentations and effects that you would consider risky. A lot of people consider risky and may or may not try it. I still do that, but I like to get as close to the 100% reliability as I can before it goes into, well, you gotta kind of have outs for this and that. So,
Yeah.
and that also depends on what kind of show I'm doing. Like, I actually would prefer to do jazz, because I like to jazz a lot. But if I'm being hired for like a corporate show or something like that, or like the Mad Monster Party, which was described in True Mysteries 2, I try to really put one foot on the edge, so to speak, without going too far over.
Yeah, yeah. That is something that stands out a lot, is the use of dual reality principles. And we had the question coming through the comments of sort of when you got into dual reality and how you got into it, and what got you interested in it.
I got into dual reality about 8 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
It was through Darren Brown's Pure Effect, I believe, and a lot of Kenton's work. Luke Germain's work, Building Blocks, and Seven Deceptions, also piqued my interest as well. Um, the reason I actually got interested in dual reality was I wanted to be able to do these effects that people either see or claim to have seen, because a lot of times there's a false memory going on. But I wanted to be able to do that anywhere at any time without a whole bunch of priming and pre-show work and whatnot, because way before this I used to do stage hypnosis, and as you know, and a lot of our listeners will know, there's a pre-selection process.
Yeah.
So I basically I wanted to be able to do these type of things, but without going through a whole process. Like, go in, introduce yourself, do a couple effects, and then you do your suggestion work. So I found that dual reality was that foot in between the two lines, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. We had another question through about whether or not you had a mentor when you were starting out. Has there ever been anybody to teach you these methods and stuff, or is it just something that you picked up for yourself?
Well, like I said, I was very much into books. I have seen a lot of performers. I talked to a lot of performers in my younger years after the show. Sometimes they tip me things, sometimes not. I'd say it's like a mix between that, and I have had personal mentorship. A couple people, I guess they weren't hypnotists, but they used hypnosis in their shows. And I had gotten an internship with Valley Industries, Jerry Valley hypnotist, and Tommy B, hypnotist from Massachusetts, if I remember correctly. So I had studied with them for a while, and I had done a lot of consulting with people over the internet, including Jerome Finley. So I guess it's kind of like a stew, if you will. I got books, personal consultation, and a lot of it was actual experience. So I'd create something based on what I read or what I heard, and I'd go out and try it, and I'd write in my little notebook, well, this could work, needs more work, or spot on, put a check next to it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I wanted to sort of, a point I wanted to get across is, especially with suggestion-based work, if you're planning on using real suggestion along with dual reality, or just real suggestion, period, hypnosis, whatever you want to do, it's good to have like a little notebook. And if you're engineering something, is write your idea down, try it out, and put a check mark if it works or not. And anything that does work, because with suggestion, a lot of times, especially if you're just engineering something or creating something, it's not going to work all the way through. There's going to be little parts that kind of lend themselves to be more malleable than the rest, and that's what you kind of want to mark off. Well, this will work, not so much, and then you can, from there, you can kind of piece together your whole effect, and that's what I do a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah. We had someone mention as well the use of psychology, and you've mentioned genuine suggestion. So what sort of tips and tricks do you have for that? Is it like a hypnosis sort of thing, or
like how would I use genuine psychology?
Yeah, yeah.
In with the mentalism. How I personally, now is this from like a creating end or just a performing end?
I'd say from both really. Just how you'd use psychological techniques to accomplish certain goals.
With psychology, how I personally approach it and how I would recommend people to approach it, whether they're performing or engineering, I say engineering because I like science, but creating, whatever you will, I would put a lot of focus, and this has been said many times before, on presentation. Because when you build a rapport with the audience right at the start, or if you're engineering it, you put a lot of work into the presentation and then you pop in your method. It's hard to describe, but everything kind of falls into place. Like you could say, well, anchoring might not work in this situation because it might be a little odd if I'm talking to the participant way over here and then I go over there and waft my hand in front of their face with some smell or touch them on the shoulder. So I would first consider your effect, what you want to get across, and how your presentation pattern and your aura, I guess, would be. Because a lot of times I see people around where I live, they want to get into that whole Darren Brown thing, and they try to come off as mysterious, and then their pattern doesn't really fit what they're doing, and I'm thinking, well, am I watching Darren Brown on Sesame Street here, or what's going on, And a lot of times that kind of impacts the audience in a way that I don't think is really that great.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Also, plugging in psychology, you can't really plug in psychology and suggestion directly into an effect, I found. You obviously you can use psychology to work around pattern presentation, but to plug it into actual effects, you really kind of got to work in reverse. You got to kind of take your psychological principle and say, well, what can I realistically do and what can I realistically not do with such and such? And then you could say, okay, well, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that. Because when I started off doing this, I'd say, okay, I want to have a whole room of people just suddenly freeze in place. And then I'd say, okay, I want to use reality stacking, or I want to use a swish pattern for that. And it would just be completely ridiculous. I'd have like pages and pages of notes, and none of them would be viable. So if you're trying to create your own suggestion-based effect, first work out the psychology of it, and then I'd start plugging in or writing down on a board or notepad, whatever, what kind of effects can act.
I think Gavin may have froze up for a bit.
Yeah, it looks like he froze up.
Yeah.
I'll just wait for him to come back.
Nicola Hughes again. The scourge of using Google Hangouts.
Part of it's just a connection thing. So,
Yeah.
sorry, folks. We'll have Gavin back up in just a second.
So I think Gavin's coming back. Are we sorted?
I'm back now.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
that's why I
lost
hate
you.
computers.
Yeah, not the only one.
I'm up in the mountains, so my connection goes up, off and on. I feel like I'm in Lord of the Rings here, out in the misty mountains. If I look out the window, an orc's gonna attack me. That's how far up I am.
Well, I live in Stoke-on-Trent, so if I look out the window, I'll probably get hit by a brick or something. It's not a lot better.
All right. Yeah. What did I miss while I was?
Well, we cut out just when you were talking about sort of ways of using suggestion and things like that, the steps that
Okay.
you go through when deciding on sort of how you're going to structure your suggestion routines.
Okay, right. Another thing I would mention to anybody who wants to present themselves as a psychological illusionist, suggestionist, however you want to present yourself, is when you're using a lot of these psychological principles and what have you, you want to be very cognizant of how other people are going to respond to that, because I noticed in my experience is you'll have a lot of people, even though they know it's psychology, or whatever, entertainment, they'll be very apprehensive of you using them. And as we know, as performers, you got to have somebody to use. Um,
Sorry, Gavin. It looks like we lost Oliver that time. It looks
Okay.
like he'll be back on any second, though.
Alrighty.
Let me see here.
Yeah, I think a chunk of it might be my fault too, because like I told Oliver, I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere up here. So.
Right. Not a problem. Let me get over to the questions page, and while we're getting him back up, we can talk for a bit. I know you had a couple of things on the list you wanted to talk about.
Correct.
What on your list, while I'm pulling up the questions, would you like to talk about? While we're getting Oliver back. Because I'm familiar with you co-authored both.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, there's Laura.
Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
My
How you
computer's
doing?
doing something. Hold on. It wants, let me just close this. Close. Hello. Can you see me?
I can see you and hear you.
Sorry, Laura, we just lost Oliver.
Oh, we did?
We did.
Well, I'm here.
Alright,
Fix my hair a little bit. There we go. So where are we at?
Oliver and I were just talking about how if somebody wants to engineer or present suggestion-laden effects, how I personally approach it and how they should probably safely approach it, especially in today's society.
Okay, did you get a chance to answer that?
Yeah, partially. We're having a few connection problems, both on my end and Oliver, so it's kind of going in and out.
Well, I will let you go into that, and then I'll come in with what I've got.
Okay. To finish up on...
Alex.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Alex, can you see the question?
That's what I'm pulling up right now. Oliver's completely gone blank. So, if Gavin, you'd like to go ahead and finish, we'll let you do that, and I should have questions available for you once you got it, all right?
Okay, because I can't see the connection. I can't see the questions on Facebook.
All right, that's fine. I'll join in. So.
Okay.
Do you just want me to finish up on the last
we'll
question?
let Gavin talk now.
Please.
Go for it.
To finish off our discussion with Oliver is when you're using suggestion, especially if you're new to it or you're used to one form of it, like say stage hypnosis or dual reality, you really got to be cognizant of how other people are gonna view that and accept it or not accept it, because a lot of people don't want to know or don't want to believe that they are not in total control of their actions, regardless if they are or not. So when you're presenting a lot of these things, you gotta, I wouldn't say present it in a lighthearted manner, but you gotta make it appealing to them. You gotta make them want to actually be involved with it, because there's nothing scarier, even if it's, regardless of the method, if it's dual reality, conventional mentalism, hypnosis, whatever. A lot of people are going to not want to fully participate in a lot of suggestion. Even dual reality works on conscious or subconscious, how do you say, rapport or friendship, so to speak, with the mentalist, the hypnotist, whatever. So you want to, first off, you want to say that, you know, this is something we're all part of. This is something that I'm not controlling you. You're not controlling me. This is just simply for entertainment, so on and so forth. And you don't want to directly imply the method that you're using unless you're a stage hypnotist, I found in my experience. Because when you start saying, okay, this is NLP or this is mind control or whatnot, they're going to immediately put up a subconscious block into that realm. So if you want to say, if you're using a lot of priming or anchoring, and you say, okay, we're going to do a demonstration here, I need a few volunteers, we're going to yada, 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 make you stick to the floor or whatnot, and then you start doing what you do, anchoring, priming, dual reality, whatever.
Can you
You'll
explain
notice a
what
lot.
priming and anchoring are?
What's that?
Can you explain for people that
Oh,
are
yes.
new to this what priming and anchoring are?
Yes. Anchoring basically is attaching a physical stimuli to an emotional or physical response. So when you're, say if you're a child and later on in life you smell a certain smell and you immediately think of, oh, I remember when I was in preschool, that would be an anchor. Priming is sort of getting somebody psychologically ready for what you're going to do later on, whether that be overt or subtle. So an example of priming would be, to make it more fun, we'll say martial arts. An example of priming would be you throw a fake punch in somebody's face, pull it back, do it again, do it again, do it again, and then the next time you make any kind of motion, they're going to go like that because you just prime them to respond to their face area.
Okay. Well, I have a big question for you.
Yes.
Can you explain to the young people in hypnosis or people that are just now starting to study the true mysteries what dual reality is?
Okay. Dual reality, the definition to me has changed over the years, but essentially what it means is when you do an effect and the audience sees one thing, but the volunteers or participants, they experience something else. So an example of that would be if you tell the audience, okay, so-and-so is going to stick to the ground, and then you go to the volunteers and you physically lock them up for moving. That would be, in a sense, in an off sense, that would be dual reality because the audience thinks, oh, he just waved his hand in front of them and they can't move. But in reality, you physically lock them from moving. As I got more involved with Kenton and Luke Tremaine and those works, to me, dual reality means when the audience experiences one thing, the volunteers experience another, but at the end of the effect, the realities of what they experience match.
So you've got participants so confused anyway that they don't know whether they've been hypnotized or not, but the audience definitely thinks they have.
Right. And that's a key factor in this new wave of suggestion and hypnosis and dual reality is instead of just having the audience experience one thing and the volunteers experience another, why not take those two realities and in the middle, I guess, psychologically confuse it so the volunteers, they don't know if they were really under an influence or not. So that's where the imagination model really plugs in. Because when you tell somebody,
Right.
imagine this, or I just want you to imagine, or act as if, what's going to happen is in order for them to really imagine something, they have to kind of go through their brain and figure out how would that feel, well, should I do this or not do that? And that's going to kind of start to build a foundation for them experiencing something.
So, in other words, you're having them feel the taste, the texture, the aroma of the thing they're imagining.
Correct. And how I would liken it to is, and this sounds kind of weird, but if anybody's familiar with the Matrix movie or Nightmare on Elm Street, or even Hook, you got a world where it's not really real, but because something is telling the brain that it's real, their mind makes up something that is kind of in the middle between being real and not real. Like the old lemon test from hypnosis or suggestion. I think I remember that from the New Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnosis is you keep suggesting things, lemon, 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 and you go through gestures, the brain is going to taste lemon and you're going to salivate. Granted, for everybody it might be different. Some might just salivate, others might be like, holy cow, why do I have a lemon in my mouth? So.
Well, I'm glad that you used the example of sticking your feet to the floor, because I do have a question about that.
Oh, from True Mysteries too?
Yes.
Okay.
And how you stuck everybody's feet to the floor and then just walked away.
Okay, you're referring to
how
the Mad
long
Monster
did it take
party?
them to realize that their feet weren't stuck?
Are you referring to the Mad Monster party?
Yes, I am. The horror
Okay,
party.
right. Basically, when I did a couple trial runs in I think it was a store, I wouldn't even call it a grocery store, it's a parking lot, sort of where the mall is. And I'll get into that in a second, but basically when I did it in the horror movie convention, what had happened was, and this is awesome, and a lot of people should try this for themselves, is when you have a lot of people, a crowd of people, you get what's called herd mind. And what had happened was after I had done the whole suggestion over the PA system, I'd say about, if I remember correctly, I think it was about, like 3/4 of them actually had stopped. And there's a little confusion at first, but then you saw looks on their faces like, wait a minute here, what's going on here? But what had happened was, because of the environment, which is full of, supernatural things, horror movie memorabilia, and a whole chunk of people doing something, a lot of people that I don't think had heard the PA system or that weren't really moving around in the pathway, they had walked in and just stopped and kind of rapport with everybody else. And that had lasted for about, I think it was about 4 or 5 minutes, if I remember.
Wow, it looks like we lost everybody else, but I'm still here. That's still a long time. I've talked to Oliver a few times about him sticking hands to the floor, getting a whole room of people stuck to the floor, and it just, as for me, not coming from a realm of mentalism, coming from a realm of sleight of hand, that's just amazing to think that you could cause that kind of effect on so many people.
Yeah, how it came about was the manager of the Mad Monster Party. He had wanted something me to do an effect that kind of fit in with the theme, which I think that year was something with supernatural energy or whatnot. And he said because of liability reasons he didn't want me to use actual hypnosis. Because you had a whole bunch of movie stars there and producers, and I guess they don't need liability like that. So I was working on creating something that would have the effect of mass hypnosis, but wouldn't have the, I guess, liability of people being not in control. With hypnosis, you really can't not be in control, but it's a dodgy area sometimes. So I had approached Frazier with a couple thoughts I had on doing this, because up until that point I had mainly been using a lot of hypnosis and a little bit of dual reality, and through that we came up with a few methods that kind of were in between dual reality and suggestion, and we wound up using a blend of that actually was dual reality, but it was structured in such a way that people would actually turn that into an actual suggestion. It would kind of like snowball, and then by the end of the actual PA announcement, people were really stuck. So it's a good way to use an example to use dual reality or suggestion that a lot of people only use in a small capacity, unless you're doing stage hypnosis, and kind of blossom it out into, I guess the best way to liken it would be a Darren Brown effect.
Right, and that's the one thing I've really learned about a lot of hypnosis and even stage mentalism is a lot of it has to be like what's close up, just brought onto the stage so that everybody can see, as opposed to a lot of magic like stage illusions or like grand illusion, which is performed to the audience for everybody, or certain effects that can be done with the entire crowd.
Right, and that's another thing I wanted to touch upon is just because something is used, and we're talking principles. If you have a small prop, you can't really, enlarge. I mean, you could, but for the most part, you can't. Take a small principle, like say a force, right? Luc Germain has one. I think it was in Seven Deceptions, but I remember it more distinctly from Skullduggery, the DVD, where he had somebody wave their hand over a bunch of objects and they would wind up stopping at a specific object. I had used that. I kind of scaled it up. So I had used it in a museum, I think it was, where there was a bunch of different sculptures. I don't remember if they were exactly sculptures or like three-dimensional paintings or something, but it was a bunch of different poses. And I had one person go behind the wall, and I put them in the pre-force pose, the one that I knew that the spectator on the other side would choose. And I had them continue with this force, and then when they had selected the pose, I had everybody go on the other side of the wall, and there was the other spectator in that same exact pose. Now this is a principle that's normally used for like making somebody select cards or a specific object, but if you are cognizant and you take something that that you can mold, something that's not physical, you can apply it gigantic, which is exactly what the Mad Monster Party was that something that normally would be done one-on-one, but you're just scaling it up. and it's not that hard.
Right. I absolutely get what you're saying. I'm trying to move right now personally from going something smaller to something bigger in stage, and I'm finding that a lot of the things that I was doing, I just have to display differently, and I can actually still bring them with me and display them to a larger audience. I do an effect of my wallet. It's just as five. It's a note card with five-digit numbers. And it's this prediction. It's just a really easy forced way to make it so that whatever numbers they predict, it adds up to. I figured out a way to take just a couple. I'm a student of Kenton's as well. There's a book of his. I can't remember which book it is, but there is a billet game, and I don't want to say what it is because the name completely gives away what it is. But it's a type of switching billet, and using that I can take it now and create it so that the entire crowd can pick the number, and it can be written down by a spectator and read by a spectator. I don't have to touch anything. And instead of having to be right here and having to have my thumb over this number here and force this, and it's all hands off now. So I mean, engineering. But I mean, if you think it through long enough, you can kind of you can see.
Right, and that's perfect. That's a perfect example, and that's where I think, personally, I think how mentalism should evolve, because a lot of people are only, they'll get a book or an effect and they'll just do it within the confines of the instruction. But like you said, if you learn how to adapt it big, you can take this one idea, this one piece of mentalism, you can carry it with you anywhere, or you don't even need to carry anything. And if you get to do a stage show, or you get called spur of the moment, you have a stage act, you have a parlor act, you have a close-up, and it's all the same thing. You really don't have to do anything extra.
Right, absolutely. And I find that through talking and doing a lot of these Q&As with some of these other guests, so I've talked to a lot of mentalists, and I've talked now to a lot of sleight of hand artists and card sharps, things like that. That mentalism and mentalists tend to value principle where you have sleight of hand artists which will take like moves, specific moves, and they'll vary on moves, where we take a principle and we'll evolve that principle and try to say use it with this, and how can I layer it like that. And it's using these if you can get to use a principle, not a routine, not like a script, really you can do anything.
Right.
Let's see.
One thing I guess to get off topic just a tad, because I got going to college now, I got a terrible memory because I got like a workload like this big. So I wanted to challenge the listeners with this little, I guess, idea I had that I've been working on. See what people can create here. I've been working on a distant PK routine that basically it takes advantage of the environment. And like we were talking about scaling something this big up to this, how I present it is, first I'll tell how I present it, then I'll get into the methodology, is you talk to a random person, however you want to approach them, random, you can do a couple effects or not. You tell them to turn around, and you have them look at, you can have a picture on the wall, or you can have them hold a picture in front of them, and you talk about how this picture makes them feel, and if it has any significance to them. And then what I do is I will move my hand behind them, and they will immediately either touch their neck or say they felt a pressure. And there's no invisible thread or anything like that. And how this works is, I noticed that when you prime somebody, as we discussed before, is sort of getting them ready, if you prime them correctly to be to take advantage of all their senses and to really kind of become sensitive, and you want to highlight that, become sensitive to their surroundings. When you position them in front of something that exerts physical stimulus, like a ray of sun, or if you position them behind the sun on a sunny day, or in front of, say, a fan, if you have them focus on something and you prime them correctly, when you put your hand in front of that thing, whatever it may be, the heat or the air, and you go like this, it creates a very distinguishable sensation on their neck that actually feels like pressure. It doesn't feel like a tickle or anything like that. It does feel, and people could try it. It feels like somebody's going like this, very gently, but it feels like a touch. And you could use that for cueing. You could say, I want you to focus on this picture or what have you. I'm going to have somebody send you a number, and you could do it that many times, like say 12. You could do 1, space it out, 1, 2, like that. So now they have the number 12. And again, this is something you can't go out and do right away. You really got to be confident in yourself on priming and whatnot. But when you do it right, it's a very odd effect. And I challenge everybody listening to use that concept. And by no means do I claim originality for this. This might have been invented before. I don't know. But I want people listening to actually use their environment, use things that are already there, and see how they relate and interact with people.
That's a really good idea. I mean, I think using things like sunlight and whatnot, especially. Where are you in the world again? I don't think that we talked about that.
Now I'm in cold old New York.
You're up in New York. All right. Well, it's cold there. Right now I'm in Arizona. Always hot.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Right. Adds an extra 15 degrees. Just putting a shadow on, or putting a shadow on something will actually take away about 10, 15 degrees, just because the heat is so strong out here. So that actually makes a lot of sense for somebody who's out here and has that sun to work with. But for priming, do you take the approach of highlighting that person's senses, like letting them know that, hey, sometimes some people have a heightened sense of, or do you take, like, I'll take the road of, not many people have this kind of sense, and then describe it and whatnot, just to kind of get, kind of challenge themselves, you know what I'm saying?
So basically, are you asking how I would personally prime a person for that?
Kind of.
What's that?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. I myself, is like I said at the beginning, is even though I like to have a solid ground, personally, with my experience, I like to jazz a lot too. So depending on the person I'm dealing with, will depend how I prime them. Like if you get somebody who clearly shows an interest in psychic activity, or the kind of person you show them one effect and they're like, oh, did you know that I had a dream about somebody dying and it came true, that kind of thing, then I wouldn't have to go as far, because I know they're already trying to pick up every little detail. But for somebody trying this, how I would recommend doing it would be to first do as Anthony Jacquin he explains in the Trilby Connection, is start off by doing asking things like, would you mind helping me? Could you just stand right here by asking, would you, could you, can you? The person is slowly kind of subconsciously building an okay to listen to what you're going to say. And then how I would do it is be very ambiguous on what they're going to feel. Because if you specifically say, well, you're going to feel this, chances are they're probably not going to feel it. So scripting-wise, I would say, sir, can you please stand over? You don't mind helping me out, would you? Okay, thank you very much. What's your name? Joe. Joe, good to meet you. Let me try something interesting. I don't know if it'll exactly work, but if we both try together, I'm sure we'll have a great time. Can you hold this picture right here? I want you to stand right here, sir. Now, what I want you to do is, as you look at the picture, I want you to just relax. Perfect, relax. There you go. I want you to get a sense, and when I say sense, that's when I would hit the anchor, whatever you want to use. I use your shoulder tap. I want you to get a sense of your surroundings. As a matter of fact, I would like you to close your eyes and take a deep breath in. And then I'd, slow the pace. I want you to kind of become aware of everything around you. Noises, everything. I do the whole senses. Noises, any smells, anything you might feel, and then I hit the anchor again, so that kind of lets them know, okay, I'm going to be feeling something. Okay, now I'd like to take a deep breath in, open your eyes. As you stare at that picture, and from here you want the tone to start dropping down. As you stare at the picture, I want you to become very aware of everything around you. And as you do that, you'll notice you'll be able to pick up on things other people normally wouldn't be able to. So what that kind of boosts their ego a little bit, like, oh, well, I'm going to become Superman for a second. So, okay, let me feel, what am I feeling for? Because I really want to show everybody I have this ability. So now they're hypersensitive to anything else, which would be the breaking of the physical structure. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely it does. And I was actually, you had answered the question I was failing but trying to ask in the first place. See, I take a little bit of a different approach when I'm trying to get somebody to be hypersensitive. I instead kind of infer that many people aren't, and that you probably aren't, but some people could be. And they kind of try to start getting them thinking, well, maybe I can be. Well, I'm here, and this is my chance, so I really need to be right now. If any time there were a time that I could have this power, like, now would be a good time. So I just start trying to create that feeling of, this would be a good idea. I don't know
Right.
if that's making sense.
Oh, yeah. Yep, definitely. Perfect sense to me.
Let's see here. I don't have the list of all of them now. I do have a few questions in front of me, but I feel that we've talked about a few of these, like your mentors. We've gone over there, correct?
What's that?
Did we go over your mentors already? I have a list of questions right here, so I'm just trying to find out what we haven't gone over yet.
One thing I think I listed in the questions I did want to touch upon was people getting into suggestion, how they view the methodology of hypnosis.
Okay.
When you get into hypnosis, even if you've been doing hypnosis and suggestion or NLP work for a while, there's always a struggle on, does it really exist? Like, why should I even be doing inductions if it's just power of suggestion, which is true, but especially if you're starting out, don't be so concerned with how it works. Be concerned about getting there, or not getting there, but actually being there. So if there's point A and then point B, I'd say things like hypnosis have different roads. So you have the one route. Oh, hi, you're back.
You got Laura back.
Okay, I realize you can't see me. I'm going to switch to the other computer now and see if I can get on where you can see me.
It's fine, Laura.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
You're fine. You can continue, Gavin.
Okay. From my experience, there's 3 views on hypnosis. There's one where it's the brain is actually in an altered state of consciousness where the suggestions are more apt to take place. The other one is it's people playing along. And the other one is that it doesn't truly exist, it's more of compliance. Now, in my experience, as both being hypnotized when I was very young and performing it, I have experienced all three. And the reason why I mention this is, especially if you're just learning it, don't be concerned whether it really works or it doesn't work, because in the end, the effect is what matters. If the audience sees one thing and the volunteers experience something, that's all you need to be concerned about, because a mentalist is a performer, a magician is a performer, an illusionist is a performer, but a hypnotist is a facilitator. And that means they're facilitating a phenomenon in somebody's mind. So at the end of the day, you're never really controlling somebody. You're pretty much giving them instructions, conscious or subconscious, and in their own mind, they are enacting these suggestions. That's why when you do a hypnosis show or you do any of these suggestion bits, no two people will really react the same. It's going to be different for everybody because they have their own perceptions and conceptions on what sticking to the floor should be or forgetting their name should be. Some people might, if they forget their name, some people might not remember at all. Some people might fumble their words. Other people might kind of make like a very elaborate, my mouth is sticking. So when you realize that you're just facilitating a phenomenon and it's not important how it actually works, in the end, everybody will experience the same thing. Even if people are playing along, if you do it right and you really put a focus on how you want it to play out, those very people most of the time will actually come away saying, oh yeah, I didn't think I was hypnotized, but that's odd. I really couldn't move my mouth. So on and so forth.
Okay, it looks like you guys are going to have to put up with just hearing my voice because I can't get the other computer to respond.
Oh, that's fine, Laura. I love hearing your voice anyway.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Okay. So, where were we? I've been trying to get things to work and I got lost.
I think we were at the importance of not being worried about how hypnosis and suggestion actually works.
I see. What was that, Alex?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My speaker's completely garbled up, so it's really hard to hear me, which is why I wasn't doing this in the first place. Which is why I was just doing the controls. Hopefully I can't do this so you guys can hear me, but I was just saying that yeah, no, it's the end result you're looking for. Because even if they play along, then at the end of the day, like, memory is malleable. They feel like they play along during that, but afterwards they may go like, well, I still did it all, and everybody else is influencing kind of how they feel, and some people may never come around.
Right.
You don't need to hold your hands up to your mouth, Alex. We can hear you.
Okay. I'm not sure at this point. I have no idea how this sounds.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. My microphone's been acting up really bad.
And that's also, on that note, as well as the effect that Fraser and I co-created for True Mysteries 2, the Stuck in Time.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of takes advantage of both, where you're actually having somebody playing along, but because of a few variables, it winds up turning true at the end, regardless of if they're playing along or actually believe they can't move or whatnot. And that's what that's what I think that dual reality and suggestion should really be, is it should focus on the presentation at the beginning, but sort of blossom the actual end result at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense to me a lot. One of my main problems with hypnosis is, I'm just afraid that my inductions aren't going to work. So I won't step out and do them. Do you have any advice on that?
For inductions, how I personally used to do that is I would never really worry. Actually, I wouldn't. I'd go in there not expecting any hypnosis to take place, and then after I would do the induction, I would sort of tailor any kind of suggestion based on the person's response after the induction, and then kind of scale it up from there. So if I see that they clearly weren't under, then I'd start maybe on some line of dual reality, and then after that I'd slowly step it up, kind of like you would for a hypnotic test, so to
I
speak.
was
Is you
just gonna
start
say
low.
that's where the dual reality would come in really
Mhm.
handy.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I think dual reality goes hand in hand with a lot of your impromptu or suggestion-based routines. Is it will take away from somebody worrying if the hypnosis will or will not work, and it really kind of adds a kind of like not an emergency, but it adds a lot of weight to what you're doing.
For explanation for the audience, one of the effects in the book is where Fraser holds a hand of cards and really makes the person perceive that they're seeing a different object than what he's actually holding. And the dual
Oh,
reality
spatial
part of
communication.
that is the imagination, where the
Right, right.
imagination comes in.
And that's actually a very important piece of information for if you're doing hypnosis or not hypnosis or suggestion. The imagination, the word imagination and the use of imagination is probably by far one of the best tools you can have in your suggestion toolkit, simply for the fact that when you're trying to deal with suggestion, whether you're trying to get somebody to see something that's not really there or what have you, ultimately you're trying to target the subconscious and the person's subconscious reaction. And if you're into psychology and how the brain works, you'll know that one of the biggest back doors in the subconscious is imagination, because there's not a whole bunch of blocks put up there. Like if you start with hypnosis as is and you go through your induction and whatnot, you're going to try to have to break down a lot of these firewalls, so to speak, of the brain, because they're going to not really want you, or what they think will be happening, they don't really want that inside of their subconscious.
So
So by saying
that's where making them feel the texture and the smell, and really getting them to imagine the object in its full capacity comes in handy.
Yes.
Makes it all work.
Yes. Because when you do that, when you really engage their imagination, a lot of those sort of firewalls, I'm saying, will actually start to come down a little bit. So when you actually want to pop in your suggestion work or what have you, it's a lot less hard for you to actually get in there and do that. It's a lot less work. There's not as much of a struggle. And because you're using that benign word imagination, they're thinking, oh, this is like Disneyland. What could go wrong? It's just the imagination. All I have to do is pretend it, and if I don't want it in there, I don't have to have it in there. But what they're actually doing is, by imagining it, they're actually strengthening everything you're saying. So
Correct.
it's like a catalyst.
Yes, I completely understand that. It's something that I tried on my neighbor and actually worked very well. I was surprised.
You didn't stick them to the ground, did you?
No, I didn't stick them to the ground. I had them imagine a different object.
Oh, okay.
There are so many great effects that they explain so thoroughly in True Mysteries 2 that there's not any way that you really can't end up performing it well.
Right, right. Much appreciated.
Are we at a point where we're going to give away copies of True Mysteries 1 and 2 to somebody that's listening?
Are you asking me or Gavin?
Huh?
Who are you asking that to, Lauren?
Is there something that you want to ask that they need to answer, Gavin?
Oh, okay. That's for me.
That's for you.
Well, I would say, for anybody who's listening, when you're doing a suggestion or hypnosis routine, what is the first thing you got to consider as far as the volunteer's point of view? What's the first thing you got to consider before actually performing any of this work?
That's a good question. And to answer that question, you need to go to contest@believeinmagicplace.com to give your answer. And Gavin, did you have a code that you wanted to give them?
Yes. I'm still waiting on Eric to give me his discount code, but basically for anybody listening, they will be receiving, or I don't know if you guys are gonna put it on the website or not, but I'm receiving a discount code for his book Bridge, which I also have an effect in there called Glyph Sync. Anybody that's very interested in suggestion-based work should check it out, and you will receive a discount on that. Basically, it's a puppet master-like effect where you kind of start to manipulate your hands, and the person does so as well. And you could actually take that into a larger extreme by having somebody feel that they're in another world, actual full-body movements and whatnot.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. So on top of them one person getting a free copy of 1 and 2 of True Mysteries, everybody in the group is going to get a discount on that book?
Correct.
Sounds awesome. So if you all would just answer that question in the best way that you can, I will forward those emails to Gavin, and he will decide who gets the copies. How does that sound?
Sounds like gold.
Gold. I like gold.
Me too, but I can't afford it because it's too expensive.
Tell me about it. So, what all did you want to cover? You said that you had people that had asked you a lot of questions that you wanted to cover. You wanted to answer for them.
Basically, I wanted to sort of, I don't really want to give full routines away because I think it's very important, especially today, for people to come up with their own material and to fit their own personality, especially with suggestion work, because that's, it kind of goes hand in hand with building a much-needed rapport. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of throw out some ideas I've been using that I would like people to try and experiment with in regards to talking about scaling things up. Some of them involve physical methods, some of them do not. One is I would like anybody who has ghost glass or is familiar with ghost glass is basically you can write something on a window, and when you breathe on it, it forms like it almost looks like frost or fog in the way you wrote it. I would like people to try experimenting with take your ghost glass, or I think, depending on how clean the window is, you can kind of breathe on your finger and write it, and it'll have the same effect. Write a suggestion like close your eyes, or close eyes, or no talk, very short suggestions but direct. Write that with ghost glass on a glass or a mirror. When you want to do a suggestion-based effect on dual reality, I would have you put them in front of the mirror and take a deep breath in and exhale out. And what that's going to do is that's going to kind of relax them. At the same time, it's going to get all that moisture from the breath to activate the ghost glass, and they will see the suggestion on there. And from that point, you tell them any kind of image you see, any kind of command that you might think of, which will be referring to what they're seeing in front of them. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to really imagine that happening. Imagine what that would feel like. And when you have a good sensation of what that would feel like, I would like you to step forward, and that'll give enough time for the ghost glass to dissipate, because usually it's about like 4 or 5 seconds. Step forward and open your eyes. Now when I touch you on the shoulder, I want that to happen to you. I want you to imagine that happening to you. And then what you would do is you would touch them on the shoulder and see how you would have to word it, how you personally would have to word it in order for them to actually feel like they're really, being, I don't know, stuck to the floor, can't speak or what have you. Kind of tweak that into your own performance, into your own style. See how far you would have to go.
I love the can't speak effect.
Yeah, it's a very powerful one.
Very strong, very strong.
Another thing I would like people to experiment with, and you can message me if you have some good ideas, or if you want to keep them yourself, that's fine, would be a use of delay in a PK routine. So you would elicit your stimuli or your anchor, scent, touch, whatever. As you elicit that, or project it if it's scent, however you want to portray it, you say, I want you to get a sense of that, and that's when you would have your anchor done. And when the next time you sense that, I want you to count slowly from 10 to 1 in your head, and then I want you to, that imagination, that thought, I want that to take full control of you. You are actually in control of your own motions, your own thoughts, but I want that to kind of sort of integrate with you. And I want you to actually allow that to happen, whatever it is, however you want to portray that. And I'm keeping it ambiguous because I want people to create their own ideas and thoughts on this. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to be talking to the person, and when you want them to do something, all you have to do is you drop that anchor again, and you're going to have a window of about 10 seconds before they actually do whatever they are to do. So you can drop the anchor and then walk behind them and write on behind the card, or whatever you want to do, erase, dry erase board, whatever. Dance or dog. Hold that behind them. In about 10 seconds, they're going to start acting out what you just primed them for. It's kind of like telepathy in action, but it kind of gives more structured delay. So you have a specific delay. You can have that happen anytime in your show with the understanding that you have 10 seconds from when you trigger them.
I see. Okay. That sounds awesome. I am trying to get to the thread to see if we've got questions coming in.
There are a few questions. Did we touch
Go
on
for
billets
it.
ever, Gavin? Can you hear me?
Now I can. I can hear you now.
Did we touch on billets yet?
On what?
Billets?
Billets?
Billets.
No.
I believe Kirsten Sims asks, do you use billets? And if so, what's your favorite routine?
I don't personally use billets, just because of the style that I have adapted into my performance. And I'm very cognizant and careful of how I present something, and I don't use billets in my own repertoire. However, when I do something like the Whispering Buddha or something that kind of would incorporate paper somehow, I do a lot of Doc Hilford's work. So I guess in short, I don't really use billets, but if I was to use billets, I would use it in such a way that directly relates to using paper. That would have you'd have a reason for using that, like burning it, for an example.
Right. Right.
So I don't know if that answers the question.
Well,
Sounds like it to me.
what's up, Laura?
I said it sounds like it to me.
Right. Well, and I can understand that. That is one of the biggest problems with billets is a lot of the time when they're introduced, it's very unnatural. There's no good reason for it. It's nice when you're, kind of walking around and like handing out business cards because that's a natural and somewhat of a natural way. But then again, most of the time, like, why would you tear it up?
Right.
That's
Right.
always,
If somebody could find, I don't want to say legitimate, but if somebody could find a good way to incorporate destroying the piece of paper into the routine, I would say go for it, because then you can, you have a piece of information. You don't need an impression pad or whatnot. But if you're doing suggestion-based work, I would tend to steer away from using. I would minimalize it. Use as much words, linguistics, as you could, as opposed to writing and whatnot.
right. It seems your approach, and I believe you said this even in the beginning, is just as pure as you can get it without it being almost overreaching. Which is always that's a really big trend right now with a lot of people, the pure side of mentalism, the psychology side of mentalism.
Yeah, I like I said, is if you can fit it in somehow, and I'm sure there's a lot of creative thinkers out there, do it. But when you're just starting, when you're making that transition from whatever you're doing now into pure suggestion or dual reality, I would keep the use of whatever they be, whiteboards, anything like that. I keep it down here, so you get used to using nothing. Because a lot of times, friends of mine that do dual reality as well, they're so used to using paper and pens and thumb tips that when they go into using nothing, they kind of feel naked. So then they start going back into, well, maybe I'll just use it this way, So then they never really get used to using completely nothing, which is ultimately where you want to be if you're doing suggestion.
Right.
I see. Kristen also wanted to know, did you have a mentor when you were starting? Would that have been Kenton or Fraser?
Well, I had, when I first started suggestion work, I dealt a lot with Jerry Valley, who is a very, very, very good hypnotist, stage hypnotist. He's been in the business very, very long. Him and Orman McGill, I think they wrote I don't know if they wrote a piece together or they worked on something for the new Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnosis. I worked with him a lot. Jerome Finley. I've talked with him as well. Book resources, I'd say, if you want to get more into this type of thing, I'd say Kenton, Brandon Queen, Jerome Finley, Luke Germain's older work, Enrique Enriquez. I don't know if he's got anything new out in this realm, but I know his active imagination is very, very good. Chris Rollins has some things. Definitely Fraser Parker. He's right now he's budding up there on creating some things that normally wouldn't be able to be created. Pete Turner's another great one. So I look in those directions.
Okay. And when you first started out, her question was, who is your inspiration? So I guess that kind of goes along with who is your mentors. What was your first gig that you did alone? And how did it go?
Okay. As far as inspirations, I've always been a fan of, performance-wise, David Berglis. He's just the way he presents everything, how his effects come across, and even how he labels himself. It makes it, in a way, it makes it ambiguous, so nobody can really pinpoint what he's doing, what exactly they're seeing. He's one of my biggest inspirations. My first gig I did, I think it was about 11, and it was mostly magic. I did a couple effects from 13 Steps, more specifically pencil reading. Needless to say, being my first gig alone, I was very, very nervous. I can't remember how that turned out, but I don't think it turned out that great. But my first gig was very, very young, and it was a volunteer show for the ARC, which is the Association for Retarded Children. And wow. I was entered for, I think it was a Christmas party. And I did do a blindfold routine using the silver dollar method, where you put the coins on your eyes and tape it up. And I remember specifically that I had a sigh of relief at the end of everything, because when I went to take the duct tape off, I had ripped a huge chunk of my hair off, and everybody was laughing, and I was laughing, so that really kind of took the tenseness from here all the way down there, and from that point, I think I really kind of had a smoother execution.
Good, good. I'm looking at a question from Mario, and I'm trying to understand it. So I'm just going to read it the way it is. And it is, what is your thoughts on that TV show? It's called Mentalist. When I saw it, I was outraged because, like The Masked Magician, revealed secrets of a magician. How did that affect you in any way? And why is the media hurting us magicians and mentalists when they get out in I'm a Magician? Another question, do you see the thread ITR?
I'm guessing what he means, if I'm hearing this correctly, is what's my opinion on TV shows exposing some of the methods that we use?
I believe so. I think that's what I'm getting out of all of it as well.
Well, as far as The Masked Magician, I really don't appreciate that whole exposing effects. I understand where they say
he's doing it wrong anyway.
Well, that's true. I mean, he doesn't have that going for him. I understand where they're saying, oh, it's to help better, help people create new effects because now everybody knows this one that we just exposed. But I personally think that kind of thing should only be done within the community itself, because regardless of if somebody knows how an effect works, if they think they know how it works because of something they saw on TV, it doesn't matter if you use that principle or use something completely different. If they think, say for instance, you cut your head off. You're a shock magician and you cut your head off. Even if you use some high-tech mechanical upper torso or whatever, and the person has it in their mind that you're using a mirror because of what they saw on TV, then that's what you did. I know that's kind of a weird explanation, but I personally don't like it. As far as the mentalist goes, the only shows I've seen is he just covers cold reading and muscle reading. I don't really have a negative opinion on that, because cold reading and muscle reading is it's one of those things, just like hypnosis, where even if you know what's being done, it's a skill set. So with hypnosis, people know about hypnosis. They know it's not some mystic power, but at the same time, it's still very impressive because you need to be able to have a certain skill set to perform these things. Like with cold reading, I know how cold reading works, and I think a lot of people do, but I've seen a lot of Ian Rowland's work, and I've seen a cold reader around these parts, and it was just so phenomenal that I know what he was doing, but I was just like, that's, wow, So,
those are the ones you want to go see.
Right. So I think exposing specific secrets, routines, actual tricks and effects, I think it's something that should be done away with. But as far as slightly explaining them or kind of elaborating on phenomenon, I think in a way it's good because it gets people interested in this type of work. So when you go up to somebody and say, okay, let me hold your hand, we're going to try to discern your PIN number or whatever, they're probably thinking in their mind, oh, I saw this on TV, oh wow, this is great, this takes a lot of skill, is he really going to be able to do it? That kind of thing.
Right, they want to know if it's real or not.
Right,
and I think
they see it on TV and they want to experience it.
In a way.
Yes. Yeah, and it does prime them because when they know about these more psychological-based things, or things like cold reading, they're thinking in their head, oh, well, I kind of know what this is about, so anything else he does, that means it's got to be pretty valid. You know what I mean?
It's so vague what he does on the show, that I'm like you. I think it helps the process a little bit.
Yeah. If it's
Sam
vague,
wanted
it does
to know, do you involve psychology in your mentalism?
Oh, yes, all the time. I rarely do a show or performance without incorporating psychology, even if it's that lowest level.
And how do you do that?
Again, I tailor the amount I'm going to use per conventional method. I tailor it depending on the venue I'm doing. If I'm doing corporate, college, something like the Mad Monster Party, because each venue you have is going to have different hurdles you're going to have to cross, or different environmental factors that'll work for you. So by limiting yourself and saying, oh, I'm only going to do it such and such a way, you could run into problems, or you could not be taking advantage of some really great things that are present within your performance area. How I normally do it, though, is I start off with a mass effect, like the circle triangle force. I'll tailor it where before I even start my effects, is I'll say, I'll explain that this is not something that's supernatural. This is not scary. I'm not trying to manipulate you. Let's everybody, before we even do anything, let's everybody have an experience in this. I would say I would have, depending on how the layout of the where I'm performing is, I'd have every other person close their eyes, or the girls close their eyes, or whatnot. I'd have half the audience close their eyes. I would show a picture of an Illuminati eye, or the eye on top of a dollar bill on the back. And I'd have the people with their eyes open get an image, an impression of this, and tell them that they're going to send this to the person with their eyes closed. Then what I do is I have the people with their eyes closed open, and vice versa, and I'd say, okay, I want you to clear your mind. I want you to touch the person's head or shoulder next to you, and I want you to really try and pick up on yada, yada, yada. I go through the whole spiel, and then I would ask people, I would use cropping at this point, as I'd ask everybody to open their eyes, how many people got something similar to this? And I'd hold up the picture. Okay, keep your hands up. How many people got something with angles on it? Hold your hand up. How many people got just a triangle? Hold your hands up. So what that does is it does two things. Is you got a whole audience with their hands raised, regardless if they got the whole picture or not, and that lets everybody know that it's not so scary.
Right.
Take part in this. It's not scary. Everybody did it anyway. Then I would start scaling up my effects. Chuck mentions this in Mentalism Incorporated. Is you want to start intensity. You want to start low and start building up, and then you want to have something saved at the end where it's more powerful than anything you've done, but it's kind of done on the offbeat. Like you end your show up here, and as an afterthought, you say, you know what? Just you guys have been great. Let me give you one more thing to think about. Let's try it. It may not work. Let's just try it anyway. And you do a chair test, or you do an outstanding PK touch routine. And as far as plugging in suggestion, I kind of have the effect, the actual conventional effect here, and I kind of plug in different things like anchoring and stacking, belief stacking, and depending on how that person is responding to these suggestions or neuro-linguistic programming, I put quotes because that's just the system, will determine on how far suggestion-wise I take that. Like if I'm doing a voodoo doll routine, I'll have the actual method, the actual conventional method, but if they're really responding to, say I say, okay, I want you to really feel this. Do you feel blah, blah, blah? And they're like, oh, ow, my hand hurt. Oh, my, or they turn around and like, what the hell? Then I know I could really run with it. If not, I just stick with just the conventional mentalism method and routine, and just keep working up from there.
Can you give a short explanation to people about what NLP really is?
Okay, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, was invented by Bandler and Grinder, and essentially what it is in reality is it's a collection of psychological concepts and principles that allow you to connect with somebody without actually doing hypnosis. I personally don't believe in neuro-linguistic programming as a total belief system or a total institution of thought, but each individual piece is very solid in psychology. Like, for example, priming and anchoring, I mean, Pavlov has done that with dogs. It's nothing new, but it does work. Egyptian priests, thousands of years ago, used to use scent and anchoring as a way to have the followers or their people associate certain deities with certain factors. So they would, sometimes in the temples, they would elicit a certain scent. Sometimes it was opium, and I'm sure the morphine and the opium would also help out too. But they link that scent with certain deities. So if they claim that Anubis, I think that's the one associated with opium, Anubis is coming to us tonight, they would burn huge pots of opium. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure the alkaloids and the opium had something else to do with it, but people would start associating that scent with the powers of Anubis or whatever tricks that the priests did to convince people of his power. So people would actually start saying, oh, I saw Anubis today. But because they're smelling it, they're not really thinking, oh, I smelt this in the temple during the ceremony of Anubis, and now I'm smelling it here. That's why I'm seeing jackal head in the sky. And again, opium has something else to do with it, but they also deal with frankincense and acacia resin and things like that. So,
well, we'll go to a little bit more of a simpler question. Sam would also like to know what your thoughts are on propless mentalism, like pin revelations.
Propless mentalism, I think, is where if you're a suggestionist, psychological illusionist, any of those things that you label yourself as that have to do with dual reality or suggestion, I think propless mentalism is ultimately where we want to be, where you want to go. I do feel that mentalism should be as visual as possible, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have props. Like a voodoo doll routine, you might need a prop, but for the most part, you can draw it on your hand, you can draw it on a piece of paper. Propless mentalism really punches a harder impact because, especially today, people associate things, physical things, with trickery. So when you don't have things, or the least amount of things you have, the more powerful they're going to associate that with. As far as pin reveals, I think pin reveals are really powerful pieces of work because whenever you get in tune with somebody's personal information or something that you normally wouldn't be able to know that's very personal to them, when it's personal, it becomes that much more powerful. I do feel that you need to use discretion with something like a pin reveal because these people, regardless of how you're getting their pin number, these people don't know. They don't know you, and they don't know how far you could take this stuff. So if you get the wrong person, you might wind up in a little bit of trouble, or you might wind up with security being called, depending on where you're doing it.
Or just
if I remember correctly,
complete fear.
Yeah, you don't really want that. Ultimately you want the spectators to have a sense of wonder, like more like, oh my God, wow, does this stuff really exist? That kind of thing. You don't want, oh, this dude's got my PIN number. Wait a minute, he's a hacker, because that's what's probably going to pop up in their heads. So you really got to
reveal their PIN number to an entire audience.
Yeah, that's another thing you got to watch out for, because then you could really piss off your host. Fraser has actually got a great pin reveal. He had one he came out with a little while ago. I think he's working on a new one as well that clears a lot of that up. So you might want to look into that. If you want to see a pin number revelation slightly go in that dangerous direction, Keith Barry's, I think it was Mind Hacked or something like that, he does a pin revelation, and the guy he does it for doesn't take too kindly to it at first. So you might want to watch that first.
Well, I think that starting out with something a bit less scary, so to say, is much better than trying to do a pen revelation. And I wanted to also mention that voodoo routine that you mentioned is in True Mysteries, and it's absolutely awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely awesome. So, you guys have really, if you don't have this series, you need to go out and buy it. It's just fantastic. You will learn things that you never thought were possible. And you will try them, and they'll become possible for you.
And that's what I urge a lot of listeners just starting out in this kind of work to do is really push the envelope. I know it's been said before, and Pete Turner, he has a saying, dare to be bold, and I mean that's true. Is a lot of these things you do kind of have to get out of your comfort zone, but if you don't see how well these things work and how often they work, you know, you'll never be able to kind of step up. And I'm not just saying that for my work. I'm saying all this kind of work. Kent Nepper, Luke Germain, Fraser Parker. You know, really try to get out of your comfort zone at least once.
Right.
So that's a good point that you touched upon.
Well, and also Fraser has this amazing stare technique in the book that works as maybe as a psychological force of some kind, if that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I'd say that. I think it's how I would describe it as more of a sort of taking advantage of a situation as well as a force. It's kind of like a lot of the things in True Mysteries too are they're hybrid type things. How we created that is Fraser and I, a lot of the effects in there we co-created. Like some of them he created the method and I figure out how to expand upon it, or vice versa. Some of them I would figure out a way of doing something and he would expand upon it, and some of them we just kind of did our own thing.
Yeah, I kind of like the way he reworded some of the things that you said for your Stuck to the Floor that were awesome, and it turned out amazing.
Yeah, that's I think that hybrid is I think that's going to be the way to go for a lot of people that want to do Keith Barry, Darren Brown type of work. By a lot of people, they want to sort of have their cake and eat it too. They want to do something that's really real, but at the same time they want to have that impromptu, organic feel that you see in a lot of Darren Brown's shows. And
these books give that to you.
Yes.
Especially True Mysteries too. I mean, there are a ton of effects in there that, are explained so, the best word for me is honestly.
Right.
They're explained honestly. The whole thing is gone through honestly, and it's a great book.
Much appreciated.
Much appreciated. Well, that's just about all the questions that I've got for you now. Is there anything you wanted to cover before we go?
I just wanted to add a few things. For people who, and if you read True Mysteries too, or if you haven't, basically the stance that Fraser and I take is we have dual reality and actual suggestion, and we stand in between the two. Fraser has a weight on the foot more in the dual reality side, and I have more weight on the suggestion side. So when you're reading this kind of work, especially True Mysteries 2, where it's both of us at the same time, you're going to kind of have to say to yourself at the end of the day, what side do I really want to be on? What works better for me? Because some people who like dual reality might not sync up well with suggestion at the beginning, and vice versa. People who sync well with suggestion might not kind of be good with dual reality, even though dual reality is
Yeah,
pretty workable. But
I kind of understood you a little bit more than him in the book, so I understand what you're saying.
yeah, it's you gotta, when you're gonna do these things, you gotta say to yourself, well, do I want to present it in such a way, but do I want to have the method more solid with a little bit of suggestion, or do I want to go for whatever and try to really do it, but have that little bit of solid ground to dual reality? You got to figure out where you fall on that before you actually perform it.
Well, Gavin, I really want to thank you for coming and spending time with our people here at Believe In.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Been a fantastic interview.
Thank you. My pleasure. I enjoyed it greatly.
And I wanted to also let everybody know that our next guest coming along is Banachek himself. Right. And Alex is going to do the interview with Banachek. They've been really discussing a lot of areas they want to cover that weren't covered when he did the interview with FCM. So even if you did see that interview with FCM, you'll want to see this interview with Banachek as well.
Awesome. That sounds like a good deal.
Thank you again, Gavin, and we're going to sign off.
Okay, thank you.